Tyler Hudgens,
Present.
Ryan Hamilton,
Here.
Peter Shaka, Tyler Jones,
Here.
Bo Bigelow. Chairman, we have a quorum.
We will now move into the communications from citizens portion. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters not on the agenda. The Commission's response is limited to responding to criticism, asking staff to review a matter commented upon, or asking that a member be put on a future agenda. Seeing no one is present and that we don't have any forums, we will go ahead and move forward into our administrative items. Number one, meetings for the March 21st, 2018 meeting. Do any of the commissioners have any changes or edits that they would like to present?
I don't. I move to approve the minutes from March 21st, 2018.
Second. Having a second, we will go ahead and take a vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
This motion passes. We will go ahead and move forward into the next meeting minutes for April 4th, 2018 for our special meeting. Does anybody have any edits or changes to that?
I don't. I motion to approve the minutes from April 4th, 2018.
Second. Having that second, we will go ahead and take a roll. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimously, and so our meeting minutes are completed. We will now move into the public hearing portion of our agenda. Items will be heard at one public hearing, at which time anyone wishing to comment on a public hearing item may do so. Comments will be heard from those in support of or in opposition to an item. In order to comment on a public hearing item, you must fill out a public comment form indicating the item number on which you wish to be heard. Once the hearing is closed, there will be no further public comment unless requested by a member of the Commission. After the public hearing, the Commission may act on all items, not requiring additional staff, public, or a Commission comment with a single vote. At this time, if staff wants to go ahead and take the floor on item Z18-12.
Mr. Chairman, you have to open the public hearing first.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Redevelopment Commission. I'm Amy Thames with the Planning Department. And if you'll recall, back in March, Hale Theater was brought for, oh, we got to plug in the computer apparently. Sorry about that. All right, saved by the power plug. Sorry for that. If you'll recall, back in March of this year, Planning Department brought forward Hale Theater's design review for a study session. And during the overall design review and exploration of this project, it was determined that the zoning ordinance that was in place, Ordinance 1329, had some conditions in it that were no longer valid, completed, or in some cases contrary to what they were trying to achieve with this redevelopment of Hale Theater. So with that being said, a rezoning was brought forward to go from a planned area development, the original planned area development that Ordinance 1329 is, to a conventional zoning. So what we are going to look at today, I think we all know where Hale Theater is in downtown, right there on Page and Ash. But the original ordinance, 1392, as you can see here, I kind of color-coded them for you with orange is outdated, green is completed, and yellow is more or less a standard condition, though our wording may be a little different nowadays, but the intent is the same. So on A, basically the Heritage Design Guidelines and the Land Development Code for the Heritage District nowadays is 0 feet instead of the 10-foot and 5-foot required. So staff would like to just go with the Land Development Code and the Heritage District Design Guidelines and be consistent. The alley running along the eastern boundary, it has been improved and completed and is dedicated. C, the developer was to provide 24 parking spaces on site. With this redesign, one of the items that is contrary to this this condition is it is being reduced to 13 parking spaces on site, and per the current Land Development Code, an administrative use permit is being processed for off-site parking, which is the norm for downtown businesses. The use permit is in process. It is out for, it has been published. It is a notice of public hearing, and the decision date is scheduled for May 17th of this month. So that would be tomorrow. We have heard nothing from the residents or from any other business owners in downtown, and so we will be moving forward with that. D is the developer to pay the cost of relocating and undergrounding utilities. Most of that has been completed to date. However, it is one of our standard conditions in an ordinance, so you will see that again in the final with a little bit of wording changed. E, the dedication of town right-of-ways. Once again, that's standard language. Anything that needs to be dedicated or any easements out there that need to be done, it is standard language that we put that in. A master plan for water and sewer. The water and sewer that's out there was planned. It was, and it's been completed. Any new is being done in the design review case, which you saw before you at study session, DR 17125. And it is for the 10,891 square foot building expansion. It is due to come back to you on 6/20 this next month, and it will be conditioned as upon approval of the rezoning, which is going to town council on 6/21 as we follow through this process. And then G, the allowable square footage for signage. 1.5 is now the standard in that land development code, and the Heritage District, out of all the districts of zoning in town, has the most liberal of signage codes. So I did sort of scatter these around the site so you could see how they are addressed, but for the most part, we feel that going to conventional zoning is totally acceptable for this project, and in fact, the current land development code and Heritage District guidelines are actually more liberal than what this was originally written under. And we feel in this area where intensity of a site and maximizing the site's potential is so important, we feel that going with the standard requirements is actually more beneficial to the town and the applicant. So with that being said, our zoning exhibit is very basic, as a conventional zoning one typically is. The first 4 conditions you see there, and I summarized them here for you, but the full conditions are in your staff report, are standard conditions worded from our typical templates for zoning. E, F, and G are based on a development agreement which is currently underway with the applicant. And due to that, there's still a little bit of discussions going on 1 or 2 of the items, and we want to lock it in that these items need to be done, but we are going to say that as the development agreement states. So that is what the first part is. I did an addendum, you have it on the dais, and the orange represents what's been added, and the strike through is what was deleted. So it's just basically saying, unless otherwise agreed upon in the development agreement, we would like you to do this. And it's not overly specific with the dimensions or the actual legal depiction of it, but it's enough to show intent, and we think with the development agreement and the signing of that, we will be well covered. So with that being said, staff recommends approval and recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission for this zoning. And it will be going to Planning Commission on 6/6 with your recommendation, as stated here this evening. If there's any questions I can answer, I'd be more than happy to. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions?
I do. I have just 2 questions, Amy. One is there anything in this change that it's not in the town's best interest? Any sort of exceptions that we think we're making here? And then the second question is that if we do change the zoning, and let's say sometime down the road, either use of Hale Theater changes or ownership of Hale Theater changes, are we at any risk by changing the zoning now versus its current zoning?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that question. The answer for the second, I'm going to answer the latter first. Being consistent with the HVC, regardless of what use comes into the HVC, these conditions would still be the same. It would be straight out of code for their setbacks, their landscape requirements, their parking requirements, everything. So regardless of the use, you could put in a bowling alley in Hale Theater and it would still apply. So no, I do not think in any way we are being detrimental to the town with going conventional. As far as the ones associated, the conditions associated with the development agreement, we feel that we're still giving ourselves a little latitude to allow a little bit of discussion still, but we think that by locking this language in, even though it's a little loose, it's enough of an intent being shown, but the requirement is there. And really, the discussions still ongoing are a little bit of just tweaking of language. It's not, so there's not an overall, and I'm going to look to legal, I don't have an overall concern that we're not going to have the development agreement locked in, and it will be the guiding document for those items.
Okay, thank you.
Just one quick question. I'm a little confused. Unless otherwise agreed to in a development agreement, I mean, does that pretty much undo the rest of the?
Well, the item in the
condition?
development agreement would be the same as the item you see here. So there will still be a sidewalk easement, and I don't think the sidewalk easement is an issue. The driveway easement, is my understanding, is the discussion about what is the width of the easement for the driveway. And so that was the one that was still being discussed. And then as far as ash goes, it's just saying that if ash gets realigned, that we're putting them on notice that we may realign ash, and that we'll work with them.
I guess I'm just,
So,
unless we agree that there's no sidewalk, then there's a sidewalk. It seems to me is what we're kind of saying.
well, the heritage guidelines require a sidewalk along the alley, so it's just making sure that it's a public sidewalk for use for everybody is what the easement would do,
Okay.
not just private use. But it is the intent of Hale Theater to be a quasi-public location for cultural events. So it's standard language to go over a sidewalk that is adjacent to a street or alley. So it's just locking it in and defining that dimension.
Okay. That's it for me. Just silly.
All right. At this time, I would entertain a motion.
Microphone on. Move to recommend approval of the Planning Commission for case Z18-12 Hale Theater as requested, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report.
As noted in the
As
addendum
noted in the
today.
addendum.
Thank you.
Okay, as noted in the addendum.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, with the second, those in favor say aye.
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 This motion passes. Thank you. We will now move into the communications portion of our agenda. There is no report from the chair at this time. Do we have a report from our council liaison? Seeing none, we will move into a report from commissioners. Seeing none, staff liaison, do we have a report from you?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I have 2 items. Just a reminder that on Tuesday, May 22nd, there is a meeting at 9 a.m. that will take place to review the redevelopment plan as it stands with the technical staff within the town. And that has been posted as a public item as we have a quorum from Redevelopment Commission. And then in addition to that, we have a public meeting that will be held on Tuesday, June 5th at 6:30 p.m., which will essentially go over the redevelopment plan and the prioritization with the public at that time.
All right, this time I adjourn this regular meeting.